Oh my God, we're back again.
Hi, Jack.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah? It's been...
Welcome home.
I don't know this.
No, it's a hit song from the 1970s.
Oh,
when,
sure.
No,
I
when
wouldn't.
your parents hadn't even met.
Probably not, no.
So the thing I want to start by asking you, hello everybody incidentally, is have you or are you going to see Revenge of the Sith in the cinema? Because it's back in the cinema, and I had a very, very interesting conversation with Child 2, who of course is the reason that we know each other.
Yeah.
And the short version of what he said was, my generation grew up with your generation telling me that we weren't allowed to like the prequels, that the original Star Wars movies were better. Mm-hmm. But now that we're grown up, we do like some of them. We know that all the things are wrong with them, but we still think Revenge of the Sith is actually a half-decent film.
The prequels seem to have been reevaluated.
Yeah, solidly.
I can remember being in uni, actually, which is now longer ago than I care to admit, and people saying to me at the time, one day the prequels are going to be seen the way that the originals are seen.
And you went, no, they
won't.
I was
like, no, of course they're not. Now, I'm not a good sort of judge of this because I'm not a Star Wars guy, and in fact the Star Wars that clicked for me was when I saw The Force Awakens, and I was like, but that's I get it now.
And this is the weird thing. This is the point in which you and I, despite the huge age gap, are exactly in tune. Because I remember, in fact, I think we saw The Force Awakens together.
We did, yeah. It was very, very early on. This is quite poetic that we're talking about this, but it was very early on in us knowing each other, and I remember turning up to that to that screening, and you were in the queue already.
Was it Leicester Square?
It was in Leicester Square at the what is now the Cineworld.
That's right.
And
yes.
I remember getting in line and being like, "Oh, there's Mark," and then you going, "Jack," and beckoning me over and letting his queue jump, and I was like, "Well, no one's going to tell Mark not to queue jump." And yeah, we saw it together at a preview screening. I remember like my comedy partner Dean, who's a huge Star Wars fan, was unbelievably excited, like jittering with how excited he was that it was back, and then afterwards being like, "Oh my God, they stuck the landing! Like, it's back the way it should be."
Did we all go round to the Imperial pub afterwards? Fine,
yes,
okay.
Yes,
because I remember really clearly. Because I was never a Star Wars fan, never a big Star Wars fan, and the original's fine, okay, but I was very much from the kind of silent running, Solaris, rollerball, dystopian future, all that kind of stuff. And then this was like Buck Rogers stuff. And then, of course, the prequels, I thought were just unbelievably lame. And I confess now that a part of that was just sheer snobbery. But I remember seeing The Force Awakens and for the first time going, oh, right.
Yeah.
Now I understand, or at least I'm starting to understand. In fact, I actually think I wrote that in my Observer review of it, but it was really weird that we saw that together.
Do you want to know I thought about this very recently, a really scary fact about the fact that The Force Awakens came out in 2015 is that if a child saw that at 10 years old, they are now 20. That blows my little mind.
No, Jack. If it came out in 2015 and they saw it when they... Oh, no, you're right. No, you're absolutely sorry.
I thought you were about to be like confused about what year it was.
No, I am confused about what year it was. Yeah.
That is crazy to me.
No, that is,
Because I think about that in terms of like my childhood, that when I saw, as I always mention, The Dark Knight at 16, in 2008, that was such a significant thing for me to see at that age. And then 10 years later, it's one of the films that defined my taste. So if somebody saw The Force Awakens at the age of 10, 11, 12, and they're now in their early 20s,
right,
that's like a childhood-defining experience.
Yes, although the weird thing, I'm sorry about the thing, I am numerically challenged. Have I ever told you the story about my advanced maths O-level?
No.
Have you got a minute?
I've got several minutes.
Fine. So this is okay. So the school I went to.
Just so you know, I didn't do O levels. They weren't a thing when I went to school.
What did you did?
GCSEs.
Yeah,
and I think they've changed again.
What are they now?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
Okay, fine. When I was at school, which was in the 60s and 70s,
when the world was black and white.
When the world was black and white. That's right. And there was only 3 channels. So if you were adequate at maths, they got you to do your maths O-level, GCSE, in the 4th year to get it out the way. So that when you came to the 5th year, when you were doing other things which were complicated, you'd already got your maths O-level. So it was like maths and I think English language or something. You did it a year early. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, because so many people did it a year early, it really wasn't a year early. It was the same age as everybody else. Anyway, so I was never any good at maths. I've always been very numerically challenged.
I'm also terrible at maths.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I mean, like, literally numbers dance on a page when I look at them.
I can't do basic addition and subtraction. Like
No.
always on the fingers, and if I can reach and just get my calculator to do it in the most basic way, I will.
Yeah. Our child one, we were told that what you need to do to make your kids numerate is that you need to introduce them to the times tables very early on. You need to do them like nursery rhymes. 1 to 2 is 2, 2 is 4. Fine. We did this with child one, and we did it up to the 8 times table, and we taught her the 8 times table wrong.
Oh,
we
no!
we literally got the numbers wrong. And so
now the rhyme's in there.
No, exactly. And now it's like, anyway.
You can't unlearn the rhyme.
No, terrible. Anyway, so I did my maths O-level a year early, which would suggest that I have a competence in maths. But that's not true at all. It was just everybody did it a year early. But then they said, okay, well, now that you've done the maths O-level, in the 5th year, rather than letting you have that time off to do the other stuff, like smoking behind the bike sheds or whatever it was.
They did a class in that.
You did advanced maths. Right, ad maths as they called it. Well, I was hard enough doing maths, but the idea of doing advanced maths. Anyway, first lesson in advanced maths, this guy comes up and he writes this stuff on the blackboard, and I'm going, I've got no idea what's going on, and also I don't care because I've got a maths O-level. I don't want, so I just ignored everything from then on. And then when it came up to doing the exams, I said, look, I don't know anything. Don't put me in. It'll be bad for the school, right? Because your success rate will be lower down.
I just love that you're like debating with them. That's like, no, this is for you.
It's for you.
Good
It's
for you
It's
to
for
not
you.
let me do this.
It's for you. And I said, I don't know anything, right? I'm an idiot. I mean, you've told me enough times I'm stupid, right? I am stupid. Don't put me in. I said, no, you've got to do it. You've done the. So I get into the advanced maths O-level. And it's like first thing in the morning, on Wednesday, whatever it is. And then I've got like maybe a history O-level in the afternoon, which I actually care about. So I go into the advanced maths. And the only things that you're allowed to take in, this like you're allowed to take in like a compass and a ruler and a protractor and all the rest of it. Well, I had a stapler in my my pencil case, and the first question was, expand this equation. So I get my stapler out, I staple all the pieces of paper that I have together, and I write the equation out very, very big.
No,
and
you
then
don't.
I hand it in and leave.
That's like a sitcom joke.
Yeah, and I hand it in, and then I leave, and I spend the rest of the morning revising for my history O-level. And I got what was then, I don't know if they still have it, a U, which was unclassified.
Yes,
I got
remember
3
them.
U's altogether. First U was for ad maths, second one was for French, and the third one was for French the second time I took it.
I sat still in my French exam and just refused to do it because none of that was in.
No.
Yeah. That would have been too advanced for me. But maths, I was so bad at maths, and this is basic. I was in lower set maths, and I couldn't get on any of my like tests, like on the pre-test tests that you do. I couldn't get a passing grade.
No.
And you need a GCSE in maths and English and science in order to progress. And
I had to have a French O-level to go to university to do English.
Right.
So I took it
Makes
3
no sense.
times, and on the 3rd time I got through.
Right. And I was so bad at it that my parents got me a tutor. I also think that I was the kind of kid that needed a teacher that was good at being a teacher, like being personable and kind of.
So it's your teacher's fault.
Well, I think partly the teacher was awful, and so they got a different maths teacher from the same school who I liked a lot to tutor me.
Oh, really?
And
so they thought that your teacher was awful as well.
Yes.
So they kind of agreed with you.
Yeah. And anyway, so I finally took it, and I've never studied so hard for something I don't care about, and I've also never been so overjoyed to get a C grade.
Well done.
Where I honestly jumped for joy. Like I opened up my exam results, and that jump for joy was I never have to do maths ever again. And I leaped into the air, and I honestly felt like I was floating because I was like, oh, I did it. And for all the other ones that I actually cared about, I was just like happy to see I'd done all right.
Yeah.
But for that one, which was a C,
Yes.
probably the lowest C they could ever offer, was the happiest I'd been getting my results.
On the third take of my French O-level, I got a C, and I know the only reason I got it because I got 2 U's, because it was C, D, E, and then U was unclassified.
Yeah.
And you got 10 marks for writing your name correctly in the top of the paper, for handing it in. And I know that on the third time I got it because one of the things was there'd be like a picture thing, and they'd say, write in French what's happening in the pictures, and I didn't know anything. But in one of the pictures, it snowed, and for some reason, I knew une chute de neige, which means a fall of snow.
So,
see, that's it. I mean, nothing else, but chute de neige, fall of snow. There we go.
Has that ever been useful in life?
No. There's not much snow around in the times that I've been to France. Anyway, so the 2 things we have in common, shit at maths.
Yeah, big time.
But we saw Force Awakens at the same time.
Yeah, and that was the awakening for me. And we've talked about this, I think, on the previous version of what is now the return of this podcast, which we should address at some point in this recording.
No, I think we should just pretend like the interim never happened.
Like gaslight everyone is thinking, no, there's been several episodes.
No, where have you been? Yeah,
but the thing about those Star Wars sequels is that they seem now to, in the zeitgeist, be hated more than the prequels. And I think it's probably because the original author did the prequels and then they were taken away by big conglomerate Mouse Disney, and now they're seen as this kind of like corporate version where they hadn't really decided what the story and the characters were going to be before they actually went ahead and did it. They just sort of improvised as they were going. And as we've discussed on this podcast before, I think that those 3 films are a brilliant example of terrible improvisation, where improvisation is saying yes and yes and yes and.
Okay.
And Rian Johnson took it off of J.J. Abrams and said, okay, I'm going to do this with what you've set up. And then J. Abrams went, give me that back.
Yeah, I don't like any
I don't like what you just did.
As we've
no
said,
and this.
Yeah, it's Ren from nowhere becomes, oh no, Ren from somewhere.
But you're seeing the prequels again because they're re-releasing them at the moment?
It's just literally Revenge of the Sith was just in cinemas.
Right, okay.
And I was... I mean,
How did you feel about it now, 20 years later?
Well, as I said, I had this really interesting conversation with my son, who is now a grown man. He's now the person that you're talking about, in their 20s now. And it was, I mean, I think if film criticism has any validity at all, and incidentally, that's a big if, I think it may well not do, although it's been a great job and I've loved doing it, and I take it very, very seriously, even if it is essentially completely ridiculous.
But isn't everything completely ridiculous?
Yeah, well, except for medicine, and social work. And,
well, that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because we've both been enjoying The Studio, and the most recent episode of that is...
Yes, well, okay, we'll come on. Let's come on to that. But
we're being ADHD about this.
Yeah, no, we'll come on to that. But I think if film criticism is to have any validity at all, part of that has to be the ability to understand that you change and your opinions change, and therefore any opinion is a snapshot of its moment. That's not to say that I think you just go, oh, I loved this, I didn't love this. That's not criticism. Criticism is, I loved this because this, and this.
Yep.
I didn't love it. Interestingly enough, I went back to my original review of Revenge of the Sith, in which I kicked the crap out of it.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
And I still stand by almost everything that I said in terms of the things that are
but
wrong.
I'm assuming as well that now, 20 years later, you're a different kind of film critic. Where
I
like
would
back
hope
then,
so. Jack,
of
I would
course,
hope so.
Yeah, because I think that part of the thing that people loved, especially in those kind of days, and especially when I was first watching you in 2000, in the sort of late 2000s is when I sort of found you. There was the Kermode rant. And even your like videos on YouTube, the Kermode Uncut series, if you were talking about Transformers or something, it would start with you bashing your head against a wall. Yeah. And so part of what your kind of shtick was at the time was get ready for the big rant.
I know.
Whereas now I don't think that comes so often. And
no, it really doesn't.
I remember talking to you about on the Avengers movies,
yeah.
and it really wasn't for you. And it was at a time when Marvel was really for me and for people like me who had been with it since we were teenagers, and now it was kind of starting to conclude.
Because you grew up with that whole MC.
Yeah, so I grew up with it, and it was kind of still for me at the time. And it wasn't for you, but I remember that was what your review said. I remember you saying, like, I know this isn't for me, but that doesn't make it invalid as a piece of work.
Yeah.
Because I've been around people who it really is for.
Yeah.
And I don't think if that kind of consideration would have happened maybe when the original Star Wars prequels were coming out.
No, but partly I think, and forgive me for taking this seriously, because I do actually take it seriously, because I do think about it.
I'm sure.
There's two ways of thinking about it. One of them is, look, I've got old and flabby and I've lost my edge, and of course that's perfectly possible. I mean, I am in my 60s now. The other thing is that obviously the way in which you judge anything changes over the years. When I started out, and I'm sure you were the same, when you start out, you know nothing, but you think you know everything. And consequently, it's one of the easiest ways to sort of demonstrate that is to just kick against everything, just be a sort of force of chaos. And it's not an act. It's not. I mean, you say it's shtick. I mean, it's shtick in as much as you get into a rhythm of doing it.
Yes, it became. What I meant by that is like you became known for that kind of rant.
Yeah, and I absolutely know that's true. It's foolish to pretend otherwise. It is absolutely true that one of the things that I made a name for myself doing was that, and that's absolutely fine. And I'm proud of it. I look back at.
They're still massively entertaining.
No, I know. Funnily enough, I go back and look at them sometimes, and I think, God, I knew a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But there is definitely you change in your attitude towards everything, and part of that was to do with and you are part of this, being around people who saw things differently, partly generationally, partly just to do with the perspective of how you grew up and the things that you loved when you loved them, and realizing that the really important thing is at least being open to the idea that it's not that there is no such thing as absolute good or bad. I mean, when there is this kind of this it's not very modern idea, this idea that in the end all art is equal. Okay.
Yeah, and I think actually, like, just to have an aside on that, we all collectively have an agreement in our culture of what makes certain art good and bad.
Yes.
And it has to kind of follow those rules or not follow those rules intentionally, and we can then look at that and collectively agree that something is either good or bad. Yeah. And there is definitely a scale, but of course opinions are opinions. But yes. I think we can all kind of agree that there is a scale in terms of where things sit in terms of good and bad artwork.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Jeff Andrew, who was my editor at Time Out magazine, once said to me, he said, "You know what your problem is?" I thought, here we go. He said, "Your problem is that you think that all art is redeemable." I said,
"That's not a problem."
No, and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, for example," and this came out of a conversation about Caligula, okay? I was saying, there's a great film in Caligula somewhere. And Jeff had said this thing, because Caligula is directed by Tinto Brass, and he told me that thing, that old saying, where there's muck, there's brass. And I was saying, well, no, actually, I think, somewhere in the middle of it, there's something great. And he was saying, it's a Tinto Brass film, okay? That's what it is. Stop trying to make it something that it isn't. Well, fast forward 40 years, and the new version of Caligula came out last year, and I would say it was one of my favourite films of last year, of 2024, because it was kind of proof that somewhere in the middle of that car crash there was something of worth. But I also think it is true that, like Oversex Rug Suckers from Mars, which is the worst film I've ever seen, is a terrible film, and no amount of open-minded rethinking will ever change that. But I still think that's different to like Exorcist 2, The Heretic, being actually the worst film ever made, because that had money and potential, and John Borman, who's an incredibly talented director, and Richard Burton.
But it's all kind of like what's behind it as well. Like, it's not just that. It's the fact that that The Exorcist 2 exists purely because The Exorcist 1 was successful.
Yes, exactly.
And that just sort of taints things as well. It's the reason, I think, to come back to Star Wars, why people are taking against
the sequels
is because they can feel the corporate agenda behind it all.
But so does the level of vitriol at the sequels surprise you?
No, because I think creatively they are all over the place, and even me, who's not at all a Star Wars fan, I even feel like, you even betrayed me. Like, I'm one of the new ones that could have been sort of brought in on all of this, and because there was people that were loud enough that hated The Last Jedi to this day, get a life, that you just changed direction drastically and went, no, we promise it's this. And then I was sitting there in the cinema going, all right, so it's not for me then.
Okay.
So I can understand why people take against them so much, but it's also with any of these things, like my friend Patrick Willems, who is a another filmmaker and sort of makes video essays on YouTube, really, really fantastic, thoughtful video essays. He has a quote that's pretty viral that people use a lot to sort of shut down a lot of these things, which is that Star Wars is a film about space wizards made for children. So it's kind of just putting people in their place, being like, chill out with with how much you are getting sort of aggravated about this. Remember what they are. And it's just putting things in its own category.
Yeah, but here's the terrible thing about that, right? I hear that, and it just makes me bristle, because I just think, well, yeah, but you could say that about. Look, I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love the first 3 movies, but I never read the book. I remember there was a review once of Clive Barker's. Clive Barker wrote a very long novel. I think it was Weave World, and the review of it in some upmarket paper said it was 50 pages of good horror and 400 pages of hobbity tosh. And that phrase, hobbity tosh. But the thing is, I think almost the weakest argument is it's only that. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, space wizards. Yeah, but space wizards, you know.
Yeah, and of course, I think it's just to sort of shut down those kinds of basement dwelling sort of people. But it's the same as when people say well, it's just a kids' film. I'm like, no. Some of the most outstanding pieces of work in my lifetime have been kids films. And it doesn't mean that that's just a get out card for it not being good enough, because it's mainly for children who are idiots. It's no, kids are smart, and kids sort of drift towards things that are good. So I don't think it's a sort of coverall for that kind of criticism, but I do think it's a way of shutting down people who are taking it far too seriously, especially now that it's become what it is.
No, yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's absolutely right. But it's just there's a weird part of me as somebody who isn't a big Star Wars fan, but I still do understand fandom, because I grew up in fandom. I grew up, I get remember it says, Mark Kermode can't talk for half an hour without saying that he wrote for Fangoria. I don't know how long we've been talking, but it's less than half an hour. But
don't worry, I'm going to bring up Tenet in a minute.
Okay, fine. The push-ups, the pull-ups.
The pull-ups are palindromes. And it's also written, pull-up is also a palindrome, and the action is a palindrome. Don't get me started. But actually, I'll get on it in a second. Go. I was going to say that, it kind of made me think about what you were saying about you finding that there's a good film in Caligula somewhere.
Yes.
Tenet, I don't think is quite as extreme, but people certainly see it as if people were ranking Nolan films, I think it would usually end up near the bottom.
Really?
I think for some people, they're like, I don't really care about that one.
Was it not a hit?
Well, it was in the pandemic and everything,
but
so
comparatively, wasn't it?
I think it's also having a bit of a reevaluation at the moment.
You always loved it.
So the first time I saw it, I was a little bit disappointed, because I overthought, and I knew quite a lot of the stuff that was going to happen in the film when I saw the film. So from the trailer, I was like, okay, so he's going to be fighting himself, and I was like,
you just gleaned this from what you knew from the trailer.
What I knew from the trailer. I was just I'd thought into it and gone, I know these things about it.
Okay.
And so for the first time I was watching it, was waiting for the film to start. I was like, we'll get to the premise then. Whereas now I understand that the whole thing was supposed to be, it's a spy film, and then we start to introduce these elements, and you're not supposed to fucking know, Jack. I overthought it and spoiled it for myself by watching the trailer and overanalyzing it and kind of unpacking it and realizing what was going to happen.
I just remember you liking it.
Well, it was basically from the second or third time I saw it that it just clicked in my head, and I completely got it for what it was supposed to be. And it's it's a bit like, if you see a film when you're in a bad mood, that's probably gonna
I'm going to after we finish recording this.
Yes, yeah. Not because of this conversation. There's something that you don't.
Something else.
But I saw it with the kind of certain set of expectations that influenced the way that I felt about it, and then when I let all that go and just watched it for what it was, then I really started to really appreciate it. And I think, as a filmmaker, I really
yeah, because you can do that now.
I fucking hate doing that. But watching Christopher Nolan make something that felt like he was this is what I have.
Yeah.
Rather than letting it sit in a drawer forever and just letting it come up with dust because he hasn't filled out everything and it's not quite perfect and the edges are a bit rough. I like that he just did it in a sort of Steven Soderbergh way, but on a $200 million budget.
Yeah, so not Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, but he could have refined and refined and refined. And for a film that's about making things better for future generations, I think it's a good thing that Christopher Nolan made that film when he did, because I have just made a short film that wouldn't exist without Tenet. It genuinely would not, because of the concepts that are in it, the way that I thought about it. My obsession with time travel is not a secret, but there are things that are like on a deeper level inside Tenet that most people won't think about because they don't care, and that's fair. But like, I really spent a time thinking about what is the drama and what's the secret kind of character stuff that's going on here, because the rule in the film Tenet is you're not allowed to discuss things because it will ruin what is supposed to happen. Right. So no one can tell each other who they are or if they know each other and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of secrets being kept. And so I started to decipher what are those secrets just for me. Like, what do I think is going on? And somebody else might disagree, and that will be an interesting conversation to have. But there is a scene at the beginning towards the beginning, when Robert Pattinson meets John David Washington for the first time. And I interpret this that John David Washington in the future will become Neil, who Robert Pattinson plays, will become Neil's surrogate father figure. Right. And so when Neil is coming back in time to meet him for the first time, it's like that scene in Back to the Future when he's meeting his father at the diner. Right. So he's kind of seeing his dad for the first time, exactly. And he's a bit drunk. and so Neil sits down, and he's had a few sort of G&Ts, and he's a bit Jack Sparrow-esque, and he's sort of slurring his words and sort of letting things slip, and he's just a bit kind of weird around him. Yeah. And so I took that scene and went, well, that's him meeting his father without telling him that you're going to be my surrogate father and whatever. So when I thought about that scene, I thought, how can you tell an entire film with that kind of secret, but bring all the emotion to the surface? And that's what my film is about.
Since you brought it up, let's talk about your film.
Okay.
So your short film, which is called...
It's called The Second Time Around.
Which I saw, we had a screening in Acton, so it was nice. So I saw it projected, which is a really good thing, because one of the things about short films is they quite often end up being seen on streaming, so it's great to see.
Yes, or even just like on someone's phone. So it was nice for you to see it. No, it was great. It was the first time I'd ever seen it projected as well.
Yeah. Oh, really? You hadn't seen it on a big screen?
Nope, that was the first time.
Tell me what because I really liked it.
I'm really pleased.
Yeah, no one was more relieved than me. There's always this terrifying thing. Somebody says, "I've made a film." You go, "Oh, great."
Yeah,
Would you like to see it?
I was very nervous, but I think I was still like quietly confident that like
I know it's good.
I know it's. I don't know if I know it's good, but I think that I know that you would like it. I don't know why. I just was like, I don't think that you're going to come around and like avoid eye contact with me and just like not want to speak about it.
Okay, well, just to be clear, so this doesn't just sound like two people who know each other.
This is also just very funny as well. That like I'm like, okay, tell me to my face, what do you think about it? It's so funny. Like I don't want to put any kind of weird pressure on you to like do that.
It's fine. So the first thing is one of the things about short films is too many short films don't understand that they're short films.
Yeah.
That the key to a short film is it is almost, and this isn't in any way to be a downer on them, but they are a single idea.
Yep.
A single central idea teased out. I mean, there may be a lot of ideas around the central idea, but one of the great things about short films is they are a way in which you can express a single idea in just the form that it takes. I love short stories. I mean, it is really interesting. I think that if you look at some of the best film adaptations, they are of short story. I mean, Don't Look Now is adapted from a short story, and The Shawshank Redemption is adapted from a short story. Sometimes short stories get to the heart of things, and sometimes short films get to the heart of things. I'm sure you, like I, have seen feature films that you then discover were expanded from a short film, and you go back and you watch the short film,
and the short film is better.
Yeah, you go, it's all there, right? Yeah. You don't need to do anything else. Anyway, so the two reasons that I liked your film very much, I mean, quite apart from all the obvious stuff that it's technically well made, because one of the things that happens at the beginning is it's nighttime and it's raining, and of course the first thing I think is, God, you've got a rain machine, because I remember Mike Leigh telling me years and years ago, I interviewed him because he'd done some adverts. People don't know this, but Mike Leigh has directed adverts. Of course, all filmmakers have, and
including me,
including you, because of course it's how you pay for the projects that you want to do. And I remember saying to Mike Leigh, "Why'd you do an advert?" And he went, "Well, money." And I went, "Well, yeah." And he went, "And also, I'd never used a rainmaker." And I said, I'd like it to be raining. And they went, fine, we'll make it rain. And he
Yeah.
went, really?
Yeah.
Anyway, so the technical...
I've had experiences like that when you're on a commercial and you kind of go in being like, right, okay, we'll ask for this, but secretly we'll know that we can get like our second or third favourite thing. And you go in being like, we'd like this thing, please, expecting them to go, no. And they go, okay. And my DOP once was like, well, I'll need at least 3 guys for that. And they're like, well, you've got 5. And good then.
Yes, yeah, so...
Oh, there's money then, is there? Okay, we're not used to that.
But so on a technical level, and also I've worked with your guys before, because obviously you and I have done stuff together before. So on a technical level, it looks beautiful. It's really well shot. It's all that stuff, and the sound design is great. And so that all those. So that's not nothing, incidentally. That's all very important. But the 2 things that mainly won me over. The first one was it is about a thing which I find poignant, which I think, this is what when you're talking about your obsession with time travel and, the way in which the past interrelates. I mean, if you look at the history of all the things I loved when I was a kid, Tom's Midnight Garden and The Amazing Mr. Blunden, and after a while you start to go, oh, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
And the second thing is it made me cry. And not weep, but it brought a tear to my eye.
Misty-eyed.
Yes, and I love the emotional response that cinema has, and I think that at its best it does do that thing. And I never take for granted any film that manages to provoke that kind of reaction. Sometimes it really annoys me, because sometimes it's really manipulative, and you can see it's like, oh, for God's sake, I hate this film, but don't you dare kill the dog.
Yeah.
But I found it genuinely moving. I found it genuinely touching, and I really hope it does well. And I think it will do, not least because of all those things I said at the beginning, that just the minute it starts, you go, okay, we're in safe hands here. This is,
I genuinely don't even know how to sort of respond to these very lovely things that you're saying, because all of the things that you're saying are basically me trying to achieve that. Okay, so it's nice to hear it kind of said back to me, even though the film is the thing that's speaking to whether or not I achieved it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So but all the things you're saying are actual goals I set out to achieve, and I'm so pleased that it exists now, because it's one of those ideas that's been tumbling around in my head for so long, and I've been boring everybody who will listen to me with the concept and the ideas and the characters and stuff for so long, that now I can just show somebody it, and it's nice to go, that's what it is. So yeah, it means a lot to me that you have seen it and enjoyed it.
And what happens now? So you now have to schlep it around film festivals to see whether it can get...
I basically have submitted it now to about 25 film festivals all over the world. And
a stupid question, do you have to pay to do that?
Yes, you do, yeah. So it's quite expensive. But it can rack up. Like, some festivals can be as cheap as £5 to submit to, and some festivals are 50, 60, 70 pounds.
Okay, so it's a big investment. Okay, fine.
And that's only to go, do you want to play it? And there's no guarantee of that, and you obviously don't get the money back. And we'll see. But there's basically a website where they have all the film festivals there. You submit to it, and you play ball. You sort of email the programmers, and you write yourself cover letters, and you really have to sort of get into that world and live in it for a while. So that's going to be my next year, I think.
There must be a certain part, because you have a name, because you and Jack were
Dean.
Yeah,
I'm Jack.
I know. I've been on holiday for 2 weeks.
Don't worry.
God, I literally, even as I did that, I said you and Jack, and then a part of my brain went,
no.
I think he's Jack.
Yeah.
But
Let's double check.
If I just I didn't even. I just waited for you to go. It was like, oh, honestly, who was it? Betty Davis. Getting old is not for sissies. Anyway, you and Dean, because you'd done that YouTube thing for such a long time, I assume that your name as a filmmaker, and you've done videos and all that sort of stuff. So it's not like you're arriving ex nihilo. People will look at it and go, "Oh, I have heard of him."
I hope so. And there have been some like really unexpected things where I have emailed people who are involved with festivals, and they did already know who I was, or they already followed me on social media, and it was just kind of like surprising. But also, it makes total sense that if these were people that were teenagers that watched my sketches and short films when they were younger, and now grew up and are still interested in that thing, then of course I'm going to run into them somewhere at something, because they're following the same passion as me.
And were you pretty much, again, forgive my ignorance because it's an age thing, were you pretty much the first wave of people graduating from YouTube into filmmaking?
I think, if not first, then close second.
Okay.
That YouTube had its first generation between 2005 and 2009, really. And
when did YouTube start?
2005.
Wow, it's funny because in my head it's always been with us.
I completely agree. Yeah, I can't remember a time where it was, and I can remember using it and figuring out that it wasn't old. So yeah, like
was there a video sharing platform before it?
Google Video existed, and then Google bought YouTube, like all that kind of stuff. But YouTube was the first of its kind.
2005.
2005, and it was mainly to. Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was to share something that shouldn't have been shared. But yeah.
What,
so
YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah. It was basically like a place. They wanted to see the Janet Jackson nipple slip, and there was nowhere to see it. Like
what?
Janet Jackson
had.
Right,
yeah. You mean there was the Super Bowl thing?
Yes, I think it was a Super Bowl or wherever it was.
Costume malfunction.
Yeah, where Justin Timberlake.
That clearly wasn't a costume malfunction because he tore off something that had a Velcro strap, and then she had a star, and it was like, no, that's not a malfunction. That's literally a choreographed move.
And I'm pretty sure, and obviously somebody can fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure that they came up with that because they were like, we wish we could just like find that clip somewhere, but there's no place on the internet to just find that clip. So that's how YouTube exists. All these things tend to have kind of weird, creepy beginnings. So yeah, I think that we were at least the first generation that used it as a filmmaking platform. That like it was like me and a bunch of other teenagers my age. So
there's more to this.
I'm going to a friend's wedding and a wedding of a friend of mine in a couple of weeks in Los Angeles, who is a guy my age who I met because we were both filmmakers on YouTube, and he used to live in New Jersey, now lives in Los Angeles, and like we've maintained contact for 15 years, and a very good friend of mine because of doing that. So it's really weird now as well, because it feels like it's a thing that's behind me, although I don't think that I'll ever stop occasionally putting things up on YouTube and everything like that, but it's certainly not going to be the main source of anything anymore. But it's nice to sort of look at it now as a whole completed story, as like a thing that I did. And it's like everything got good things and bad things within it. Certainly a very weird thing to do in your late teens, early 20s is to be like famous in certain rooms. Like depending on what room you go into, people can scream at you, and that's a very strange thing to go through.
You had people scream at you?
I've had people cry because they've met me. Like it's
well,
very.
I've had that, but not for the same reason.
It's a very, very weird thing to reflect on and go, that probably wasn't normal to go through that at such a young age.
Give me the context of this. I'm sorry, I'm not.
No, please, yeah.
So what's the context of somebody crying because they met you?
Well, it's happened in various situations, but like, you know, people have chased me around rooms because I've been at a certain event, and because the floor is full of like the people who've paid to be at it, like at a VidCon or what was called a Summer in the City, which was like a YouTube convention.
This is like a Comic-Con for video.
But for online video. And if I went out onto the normal floor, I couldn't move. Like people would just flock to see you
because they'd been watching you on YouTube.
So because that was the place where they all that's what I mean about famous in certain rooms. If I went into that room,
you didn't mean actually.
I mean literally.
I thought you meant a metaphorical room. No, you mean literally famous in certain rooms.
I mean literal rooms. Like so, I'd have to be like carted around backstage and like in and out of those like industrial lifts and through kitchens. I felt I was in Goodfellas.
How old were you when this was going on?
I was probably between the age of 23 and 25, 21, 25, like that.
Like a pop star.
It had that vibe. Like it was definitely that kind of vibe. And I certainly wasn't even the most popular of the people that were on the platform at the time either.
No, they all wanted Dean.
Yeah, well, exactly. He had better hair. And so like it was really strange to even have like a small kind of taste of what that felt like. And Dean especially didn't like it. But I was kind of like good at dealing with it, but it became very like get through it and almost like not being present for it. But then when you'd meet people
that's so weird.
It is, and I'm glad that you think so, because like I've had therapy sessions where I'm literally like unpacking like what it meant at that age to sort of meet people in that context for the first time when they already kind of know who you are, or they see a value in you. Like that's strange. And like so meeting people. Sometimes you'd meet people at meet and greets, which was basically where they queue for 2 hours, and you'd meet people like one every 30 seconds or one every minute or something like that. And we always found that very strange to be I guess, commodified like that, to like, come and meet these people like we're Mickey Mouse at Disneyland and get a selfie and go away and maybe give us a drawing that you've done. It was very strange. Some people would be normal, lovely. Some people, it would be a sliding scale of, then some people would be like silent when they met you. They couldn't speak. They just didn't know what to say, and so they just remain quite quiet. And then some people would get really emotional and tell you very vulnerable things. So some people would meet me.
That must be hard.
Meet me for the first time and say, that they are alive because we made comedy videos that helped them, and like that in a way, even though that's intense. That kind of feeling to know that like, oh, we just like stressed over whether an idea was good enough or funny enough, and like, but then just because we made something and decided to share it, somebody's alive. Like that's kind of putting into perspective for me, in a very literal sense, the power of art. And I know it as well as a consumer, but to have made something and to have someone literally tell me that it's had that kind of effect on them is why I probably want to keep making stuff. And actually, the film that I've made that is going to go around, and I can't wait for more people to see it. The reason I've been so excited for it to exist is because I can't wait to hear what people say to me when it's finished. Because I think actually, the thing I'll derive quite a lot of pleasure from is how people choose to talk about it. And you know this, of course, but I think that when someone tells you about a film, they're not telling you about the film, they're telling you about themselves.
Yeah.
And so when it's the thing you've made, I'm going like, I've just popped that out there now. Now let's see what you bring back to me. Because if somebody chooses to interpret it a certain way, like what I've noticed, I think, and I won't go too much into this because I obviously want people to see this without with as little spoilers as possible, but I think I've made quite a like sad film. That was my intention, but I just made it, so it doesn't matter. What I've found is that the people who have seen it come back and tell me that they view it fairly optimistically.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's interesting.
Yes.
I think it's super interesting that most people, at their core, want to be optimistic. But yeah, it's been a very interesting kind of experience to go through that and then see how that's still influencing the kind of work I want to make now.
I mean, it's kind of funny because, our experiences are very different. For one thing, you're working in a visual medium. I think when people watch you on YouTube, like you're saying about, walking into a room being recognised.
Yeah.
Because most of my career has been on the radio. I've done bits of television, but nobody thinks I've never been a great TV presence. I'm radio. And one of the things about radio is that you can radio and podcasting, you can do quite well in it and walk down the street and no one has got a clue who you are until you go into a shop and order a loaf of bread and they goes, that bloke off the radio. Also, when I was the age that you're talking about when all this stuff was happening, I was in Manchester, I was smashing the state and we were doing the Viraj Mendes defence campaign and we were attempting to bring back the end of world capitalism. And so any level of recognition that I was in my 30s. I mean, I came down to, back down to London in my late 20s. And
I think it's a healthier age to start.
Well, I just can't imagine what it must have been like. I mean, it just sounds absolutely nuts. Also, I have never had the experience that you've had. I've never had somebody come up to me and burst into tears. That's literally never happened. And and I'm kind of grateful that it hasn't. But it is a strange thing that although there are areas of intersection between what we've done, the differences are much more pronounced. I mean, I know that we do this as a kind of joke, that you're a child and I'm an old man and blah, blah, blah. There is a generational thing that the world between me being a young man and you being shifted on its axis. And I get this now that people say, well, how do you become a film critic? I go, I have no idea.
Yep.
If you put me in a time capsule and took me back to the 1980s, I'll get you a job at the NME.
That's literally the same when someone has asked me like, oh, how when people used to ask me, how would you get views on YouTube? I'll say start in 2010.
Yeah,
precisely. I genuinely don't know now. And actually I feel sort of at arm's length with making stuff for the internet now because it's so saturated and everyone is making their own stuff so quickly and I just can't work like that. And it's also interesting to me as well that it's happening again is what I'm saying, is that like from how it shifted from you to me, it's happening again but faster, that what I was inspired by to make things on the internet, and now I'm trying to like take it into a different kind of realm and make more traditional film and television. What the people who are making stuff now are inspired by was the stuff that we made.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, it's like short form inspiring short form, and it's kind of, it's happening even faster now. Like I don't recognize the world that they're in now.
Okay, so to pull all of this back to something that we promised we would do earlier on.
Star Wars.
No, the studio. I think we've done Star Wars. So the studio. Did you watch the studio?
I am watching it. So I, unlike you, don't just get sent the whole thing, which is annoying because I really like it.
So how far in are you?
The Doctor episode has just happened.
Fine. Okay.
And this is actually something I wanted to bring up on here as well, because I think there has been a lull in the film world from post-Oscars to now, and it's starting to just pick up.
Well, there always is after.
Yeah, but it's just felt like a bigger lull than usual this year.
Well, I don't know.
But
I
think
you speak to any. And we were saying about Act One cinema. You speak to any art cinema, and they go, what happens is you get everything, and then there's the Oscars, and then there's this massive hole up until I suppose when the next tentpole would be Cannes, and then it's May. But there has been some barren weeks.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that void has been completely full in terms of the conversation in the zeitgeist with television.
Yeah.
Like The White Lotus, Severance, Adolescence, and now the studio.
Have you watched all of The White Lotus?
I have seen all The White Lotus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we just agree that it has taken Jason Isaacs to the next level?
He's so good.
He is now, but that's it, isn't it? Like after all these years, he is now a proper superstar.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and he's been great for decades. He's been putting the ads in, but he's got it. It's like it's the next level, isn't it?
Yeah. I just thought the whole of season 3 was just fabulous, and I thought a much more restrained version of the show, like. Season 2 is very like raunchy, and like it's all very drama, and like everyone's sleeping with each other, and like it's just the gays, they're trying to murder me, like it's all very camp.
Yeah.
And I think that season 3 has taken it down to a different kind of vibe, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I think not everybody has. I think some people have missed a bit of that, but I think it's a really like it's also dealing with very classic storytelling archetypes and putting them into a very modern day, and I think that's a very cool thing to see.
Okay, so in relation to that, so the studio, so here's the weird thing with the studio. So in the studio, the character that is played by Bryan Cranston,
yes,
has the same name as the character that Tim Robbins plays in
now.
The Player.
Coincidentally, I watched The Player because of the studio.
Okay, fine.
I'd heard Seth Rogen mentioning that The Player was a massive influence, and so I was like, I should probably see this.
Well, it's the weirdest thing because obviously I remember seeing The Player when it first came out, okay? And it was a big celebrated thing, because it was Hollywood looks at Hollywood. It's got the incredible long opening train. Everybody talks about, Lady from Shanghai, blah, 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 blah. And there's a very good gag at the beginning of it when somebody says, who let Adam Simon on the lot? And 3 people in the audience laugh, the 3 people who know Adam Simon, okay? Because Adam Simon is a filmmaker. He made Carnosaur 2, I think it was, anyway, but he made a brilliant documentary about horror movies, and with a certain group we all knew it was very funny. They said Adam Simon's name. Anyway, that film, it was the film of the year. And then when the studio came out, when I heard about the premise of it, I thought, this is kind of like The Player on TV. And then you go, hang on, is he the same guy? And of course, there isn't any actual connection in terms of the production, but it's a nod.
Just them tipping that.
It's a nod towards it. So we did this back to front. I watched The Player first, loved The Player many, many years ago, then watched the studio thinking, it's going to be a TV version of The Player, but really, really enjoyed the thing. You watched the studio, but when you went back to The Player, did The Player work for you?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
fine.
Oh, I thought it was great.
It is great, isn't it?
It's really, really good.
On behalf of all writers, I will kill you.
It's meta on the right level, I think.
Yeah.
And especially for the time that it was made, I'm assuming that there wasn't much of that kind of inside baseball.
That whole
kind of
idea
stuff.
about Malcolm McDowell playing Malcolm McDowell, having the snip at the guy, and it was like, that's actually Malcolm McDowell doing that,
Because my first sort of entrance point into that kind of thing was when Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant made Extras, which I thought was fantastic, and to this day I think is brilliant. But I'd never seen, it's that person playing a version of themselves. And obviously, like when The Player was made, I'm assuming it was very new.
I mean, I hadn't seen it before, and I remember I mean, I just remember being in a screening, and it was like every time that's why I say the Adam Simon thing. It was like the more in the joke was, the more we all. I mean, it's very smug, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it can be very smug, and I think that's what the problem with like Deadpool and Wolverine is. It's like
but The Player is a really, really good film. It's a really good. It's a really good, well told story, and
I like that it's a film that's basically saying, yeah, these kind of people, they're kind of bad people, and they will get away with it. My
favourite shot in that whole film is at the end when, after Richard E. Grant has done all this stuff about no stars, no happy endings.
Yes.
Because that's, and then for the very end, it cuts to, Bruce Willis carrying Julia Roberts out of the thing, and then it cuts in the screening room to Richard E. Grant.
It took me so long.
But then it cuts to Richard E. Grant watching it, and he goes, yes! And that's it. It's like, with one gesture, he steals the whole film, because he's gone from being that guy to being that guy. And no, I love that.
And I like as well the studio has taken the aesthetics of The Player as well and infused it with the modern day kind of energy.
Yes.
Like it's still... Every scene is done in this lovely one take, like blocking, which is kind of the theme of the year. It seems to be that everyone's doing things in single takes, which is fine with me because I think it's really cool. But it's sort of infused it with like whip pans and all that, and it's still got that same meta level to it where it's inside enough, but like not enough where you feel like, oh, for God's sake. Like it's not alienating anybody. The one that I really want to point out that I really liked in the studio is in the second episode, which is the Wanna.
One shot, the Wanna within the Wanna.
Yes, which obviously is not a real Wanna. It's like 4 or 5 takes stitched together. Yeah. But there is a bit when they say, like, couldn't we just do, can we stitch it together, like, in whip pans? 1917 did that, and then it whips, and there's obviously a cut there to somebody going, we're not doing that, we're doing it properly. And I think that's so funny, because it's so easy to miss that joke. That they've just done the thing they said they're not going to do. So good.
The thing that you just watched the medic episode, the doctor episode, in which basically... the studio executive, played rather brilliantly, I think, by Seth Rogen.
I think it's so good. It's like the best thing he's done in a long time.
Yeah, and he goes in as somebody who believes in cinema, believes in art, believes in celluloid. He's a champion of all that stuff, and then ends up making the movie that he doesn't want to make. But blah blah blah. I don't want to spoil anything for him, but it's smartly done. But he finds himself at a dinner do, a charity event in which he's on a table with doctors, and they get into this argument about, well, what the doctors do is really important, but what do? Oh, you make those dumb movies. And he goes, well, yeah, but they're very important, and he's like, blah blah blah.
When you're in a hospital, what's on every wall?
A screen. And actually, I think the smartest thing about that episode is, although the gag is, we've seen how much of an asshole he is. We've seen how much he's sold things out in order to get where he is, in order to make the movies that he doesn't want to make, but he has done so. And there's the whole thing very early on when he's shafting Martin Scorsese. There's the thing about, I'm really glad he's got to do this because it's so personal to him. And at that point, you already know it's not happening. But the really clever thing about the studio is, in that episode, when you're several episodes into Seth Rogen's character is an asshole, you go, he's got a point.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's also, they're getting away with it because he genuinely does love this.
Yes, he does, yeah.
You can feel how much he is wrestling with the fact that, it's that line that's so brilliantly put in, that he has said he is quoting this from an actual executive. Then he names them and says he now runs Fox Studios. Like, it's so funny that he's just like not being shy about any of this. That I got into this business because I love movies, but now I think it's my job to ruin them.
Yes, yeah.
And that just sums up exactly what he's going through every episode. It's the struggle of, I really want to make good stuff. I really, really, really want to make good stuff, but I also have to make the studio money. Yes. And so I have to make the Kool-Aid movie.
But in a way, I think that's the difference between that and The Player. In The Player, the Tim Robbins character is an asshole.
He is just awful.
That's it. He's just awful and fine. And there's that very, very funny thing in which he gets pitched The Graduate Part 2. And it turns out there actually is a novel of The Graduate Part 2. Anyway, fine. But for the TV series to work, you can't do that.
No.
For the TV series to work, he has to actually basically be somebody who genuinely loves films, genuinely wants to do interesting stuff, but just can't.
Because we're rooting for him the whole time. And I actually find that the sensibilities of the show quite British. Like,
Oh, that's interesting.
Because he's bumbling and messing things up,
Right, yeah.
and like that feels to me like a very like obviously some of the jokes are more American and there's a lot of slapstick and people falling off things and through things, and that's very
Always
classic
funny.
Seth
Always
Rogen
funny.
stuff. But it is funny, but I think most of the time it is him going like it's in that Warner episode when he's going like, no, I just have one note. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to talk, and it's like just leave her alone. Like just sit still.
And it's Sarah Polley. And it's actually Sarah Polley.
Yeah, it's so good, and I'm really enjoying it. And actually, within the void of like, I just feel like I haven't been to the cinema very much recently, which is just upsetting because I'm just like I love it there, and I just don't feel like I'm being pulled towards it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that in that interim. And I hope that things are going to start picking up soon. I'm seeing Sinners tomorrow. Mission Impossible's coming out soon. I'm
Tom is coming to
bring
save the
it
world.
on. But in that interim, I'm glad that we've had what I think have been some of the best pieces of television I've seen in recent memory.
Okay, so can we finish on this? This is the last thing, because
Please.
we have to draw this to a close now. Okay. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Part 1. Followed by
Yeah,
Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning.
yeah. They made a mistake. I don't know how they're going to get out of that. I wonder if it's going to be something to do with like. I wonder if they're going to get out of it by saying like it's something to do with how the AI, the villain AI in it is going to. I don't know, but like I just they've made a mistake.
You just go, boys.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's a rookie error.
It's
Part 1, followed by
a different title. But yes, it's that's the only thing I will allow criticism for, because the rest of it looks like the greatest film ever made. Like holy hell! Like I watched that trailer for Final Reckoning and I was like, this is just made for me. Like just bring it on. I can't wait. And my girlfriend has a joke that throughout the entire 2 hours and 50-minute runtime, which is apparently what it is, I'm just going to be nudging her going, he really did that. He really did that. He really did. He's hanging on that plane for real.
Yeah. He can hang on that plane. He can do all that stuff. He can't sort a fucking title.
Well, Mark, I've missed doing this. Should we do it? Should we do it more?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, brilliant. All right. Well, I'll see you next time then.
See you next time.
Oh my God, they're back again.